Promotional consideration paid for by the following. Yo Joe Outlet, your only source for G.I. Joe weapons and vehicle accessories. Don't have that incomplete Joe any longer. Connect with Yo Joe Outlet Center and complete that figure for an awesome price. Go check them out on eBay at Yo Joe Outlet Center and Facebook Yo Joe Outlet. Guys, you know I love a good horror movie. And what is the point of a horror movie? It's to scare you. The Fear Footage Part 1 and Part 2 accomplished that exactly. It scared me. It made me jump. And I'm not embarrassed to say, it made me shriek a few times, just like a little child. Guys, go check out thefearfootage.com. If you like found footage movies, forget that. If you like horror movies in general, if you like to be scared, if you like to pull the blanket up over your eyes, go check out The Fear Footage 1 and 2. Order it directly from thefearfootage.com. Blu-rays on sale, or go check them out on Amazon, The Fear Footage. And welcome to Wrestling with the Past. I am your host, Jason Up of the New 80s Revolution, and I am joined as always by Vince McMahon and Pat Patterson. All right, well, let's go with that. Let's go with that opening. Still in the championship wrestling review world right now, ladies and gentlemen. The very next show is a house show, but today we are reviewing January 22nd, 1983, the episode of WWF Championship Wrestling. Back in the day with the tape trading, there would be times when you would not get a full set, a full run. The sets would circulate, and if somebody put together a set, that was the set that went out to everybody, right? So if you didn't have an episode, if an episode wasn't available, nobody had it, right? Because our DVDs would circulate amongst all of us. So, if somebody found a missing episode, it was like this grand event, and we would all be excited about it. But for this case, the January 15th, 1983 episode of WWF Championship Wrestling, I don't have. So we're going to skip it. We're just going to skip right over it. I'm going to review these just like I have them, the way I have them. I'm not going to go searching for the information. I'm not going to, if something big happens, we'll tie it together, but I'm reviewing what I have. So January 22nd, 1983. As always, Vince McMahon and Pat Patterson in their powder blue, their baby blue suits, welcome us to the show and run down today's card. Our opening matchup is the Polish Prince, Ed Wiskowski. And as I mentioned last episode, he goes on to much more household name exposure, fame kind of thing in the AWA as Colonel De Beers. But got his start in the WWF as the Polish Prince, which I mentioned was kind of strange last time because if you know modern day McMahon, he doesn't reuse, or he doesn't have dual characters with similar names. So Polish Power, Ivan Putski, and the Polish Prince being in the same WWF is very strange for Vince McMahon. Maybe it didn't mean that much to him back then. But Ed Wiskowski, the Polish Prince, taking on a enhancement talent that we have not seen thus far on Wrestling with the Past, Charlie Brown. I'm sure that's his real name. Charlie Brown is our actually, it probably is his real name. Now, why would jobbers have a different name? So Charlie Brown taking on the Polish Prince. Polish Prince, of course, brought to you by Freddie Blassie. And again, we have our referee Danny Davis in his very strange Catwoman outfit. I have no idea what's going on here. This is the same set of TV tapings. So you're going to see 4 episodes in a row. And I'm assuming the January 15th episode that we don't have. You're going to see 4 episodes in a row with basically the same guys. You're not going to see anybody new. This is this is how they would do it when they would tape for TV. They would tape 4 weeks at a time. So you'd sit there through about a 4.5-hour show, and all 4 weeks would air, and it would look, they'd stretch it out, and they'd tape a whole month of shows. So what they did was they would just use the same guys over and over again. They'd recycle them. Unfortunately, they did that every single week with superstar Billy Graham for the month of January. He's been a part of the show, and that's been dreadful to watch. But we have Danny Davis in his cat suit, his Catwoman outfit. Not sure why. One thing I noticed about these old shows, there are no ringside barriers, and the fans are extremely close to the ring. Extremely close, like almost where you could stretch out your legs and touch the ring. It's that close. But what I also noticed was how respectful the fans were. Could you imagine in today's era if the fans had no barrier, if they were that close to the ring? The other thing I noticed is everybody is sitting. They're all sitting. They're all sitting and enjoying the show, right? They're not trying to be a part of the show like today's idiot fans are. They're staring at the action. They're enjoying the show. At one point, Charlie Brown gets tossed out of the ring, and a fan must have been walking back to his seat, and Charlie Brown practically fell on him, and the fan had to do a dance and scoot by him. But what he did was he scooted by him and then hurried back to his seat, right? What would a fan today do if a wrestler fell on top of him? He'd pat him on the back. He'd take a selfie. Why? Because we suck. That's why. But this guy just whoa, got to get out of the way, and hurried back to his chair. This match is all Polish Prince. Charlie Brown, no offense whatsoever. I don't know what their plans were with Ed Wiskowski, the future Colonel De Beers. I have no idea. I don't remember seeing Polish Prince in any higher profile matches in the WWF during this time. So I don't know if they were just, bringing him in for a short run, but they were giving him a push. He was getting all the offense in these jobber matches. I don't remember a higher profile match. We'll check out some house shows, obviously, coming soon. So we'll see if he's on one of the house shows. I doubt it. I don't think that Polish Prince wrestled at MSG or Philly but we'll check. Like I said, all Prince with stomps, kicks, punches, and wins it again with the Texas Cloverleaf that Patterson and McMahon still have not figured out what it is. They don't know what to call it. And I noticed that throughout the show, and I talk about this a little bit later. Vince McMahon does not call moves by their name. Later on, Don Muraco does a belly-to-belly suplex, right? And we've known, belly-to-belly suplex is a Greco-Roman amateur wrestling move that's existed forever. And he pulls off that move in the match, and McMahon doesn't know what to call it. He just calls it Muraco driving his shoulder, all of his weight onto the opponent. That was the move, driving his shoulder and his weight into the opponent. That's what McMahon called a belly-to-belly suplex. I don't know what the deal was with that. So Polish Prince wins it very quickly, defeating Charlie Brown. We move on to a rare appearance by the WWF Tag Team Champions, the Strongbow brothers, Jay and Jules Strongbow. They take on, non-title, of course, Tony Cologne, who we've seen a bit during January, and Johnny Rodz. Now, Johnny Rodz, and this is pointed out by Pat Patterson during this match, Johnny Rodz is the best worker in the ring in this match. Jules, Jay, Tony Cologne. Johnny Rodz is the best wrestler in this match by far. And it's pointed out by Pat Patterson. Pat Patterson actually says, Johnny Rodz has a great deal of potential. But he said something weird that I couldn't understand. He said, but he has not settled on a style yet. That was Pat Patterson's reason for Johnny Rodz still being on the undercard. He has not settled into a style yet. And I have no idea what that means. The Indian team, if you will, the Native American team, the Strongbow brothers, have extremely elaborate headdresses and gear, and they just come out wearing these massive Indian get-ups, which again we would never see today. And at one point the crowd is doing the, I'm not even going to do it because it sounds so stupid, but the Indian war cry, that whole thing. So you hear somebody in the crowd doing that, and it just fires up the Strongbow brothers like it's a term of endearment. One thing I noticed about the championship belts, they are so plain. The WWF Tag Team title at the time, the Intercontinental title at the time, and even the Heavyweight title are what was known as, so these are trophy maker belts. So basically the belts were not made by a belt maker. I heard that they were made by a trophy shop. And so you have these giant emblems on them, like you would on a trophy. So there's an eagle on the heavyweight title, and that's actually a trophy piece. Right, so you've got these very thin metal plates, or I don't know, aluminum, who knows, thin metal plates with some etching and this big old trophy piece attached to it. Really thin belt, really thin straps, but I really like them. I think that they're such a throwback, and these stupid gigantic belts that we have. I mean, Ric Flair's big gold belt was the first one that I was like, oh my God, look at that thing. That is, that was the first time that we were really showcasing a world's title belt, was that giant big gold belt that Flair had. But the WWF belts at the time were very, very simple, and all of this brings me back to a much better time by far in wrestling. In this match, as I mentioned, the titles are not on the line. That's not a surprise. And the jobber team of Tony Cologne and Johnny Rodz have a heck of an offense. They get a great run of offense against the Strongbow brothers, beating them up all over the place, really working over Jules a lot. And Jay Strongbow has to make the save a lot, the hot tag, if you will. In fact, during one point in the match, Pat Patterson or Vince McMahon mentions that Jay Strongbow wanted to keep Jules, his little brother, his baby brother. He wanted to keep him out of the wrestling business. He would talk to him and say, no, don't get into the wrestling business. But Jules was adamant. And Jay Strongbow finally conceded and said, look, if you're going to get into the wrestling business, you're going to team with me, because I'm your big brother and I'll protect you. A little bit back and forth. The jobbers, like I said, get their good amount of offense. The champions battle back. Jay Strongbow has a very strange Hulk up move, and by Hulk up, that's kind of the universal word or phrase for pumping up and getting that old style where you were getting angry and getting pumped up and the crowd was cheering for you and the bad guy was pounding on you, but you weren't feeling anything. You were shaking it off. You did, the Hulk Hogan Hulk up. Well, Jay Strongbow's version of the Hulk up is very strange. It's a very strange, twitchy, spasming, seizuring war dance that he does around the ring. And his head is at a very weird tilt, right? His head is tilted, and he's nodding it up and down, and he's getting hammered in the back, but he's just dancing around the ring doing this stupid Hulk up seizure, and then of course he hits the big chop on the top of the head. And look, I've tried to chop myself in the head many times, and I can't feel a thing. So I don't know how that chop on the top of the head is supposed to. I don't know why all the Indian wrestlers would use a chop. What does that have? What does a chop have to do with Indians? I don't know. Not saying. Whatever. Oh, somebody's calling. We'll just skip that. The tag team champions, not surprisingly, win the battle with a double chop. In fact, this one is called a double tomahawk chop. Really simple move. Whip the wrestler, whip the opponent into the ring. Jules and Jay are in the ring. Opponent comes off. Both Jules and Jay hit the chop. Down goes the opponent for the 1, 2, 3. Interesting. I guess the Indian wrestlers chop harder than the non-Indian wrestlers. And in today's wrestling, there's like 300 chops per match. Nobody's pinned with a chop. But in 1983, the double tomahawk chop ended the match. Okay. Next up is our Body Slam Challenge continuing. Big John Studd is on the card today, and he's taking on Barry Hart, also known as Barry Horowitz. And they've given up on fans entering the ring to do the Body Slam Challenge. They've given up. They're realizing that it probably didn't work. So they're bringing in enhancement workers to try to body slam Big John Studd. And at this point, the money is up to a whopping, a life-changing $3,500. Up this week is Bob Bradley, who's a power lifter, a legitimate power lifter, Bob Bradley, and he looks like a power lifter. And I have no doubt that Bob Bradley could have easily scooped up and body slammed the 350-pound Big John Studd. No doubt about it. But of course they're not going to let Bob Bradley do it. And so he gets him up and he budges him a little bit and the crowd pops and McMahon pops and then can't do it. Can't do it. The power lifter can lift 700 pounds dead weight or whatever it's called. What are those things called? I don't know. Deadlifts. But can't get Studd up. So Studd, of course, fakes the handshake. Good job. And since it's a wrestler, not a fan, Studd attacks him, throws him out of the ring. So we get on to our match. We get on to our Big John Studd versus Barry Horowitz match. This one is refereed by Billy Caputo. And Billy Caputo recently died. He died about a week ago. And he has been a WWF referee since 1983. And reffed well into the 90s, Billy Caputo. And he died very quietly as far as like announcements and fanfare goes. And I met him unexpectedly at one of the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame get-togethers. He wasn't advertised. He was just walking around as a fan, and I said, "Hey, I know you," and he took a picture with me, and that was great. Yeah. So Billy Caputo is ref. Late great Billy Caputo. Barry Horowitz says, "Hey, if Bob Bradley can go for the slam, I can go for the slam too." To no avail, as McMahon would say. Studd, of course, dominates Barry Horowitz. And what I noticed in this match is Big John Studd's body slams look like they hurt a lot. And I know back in the day, the enhancement talent, some of the stars would really pull no punches with the workers, with the lower card no name guys. We've heard stories about them being pretty rough and having the road warriors, guys like that, just not really protecting the enhancement workers. And Big John Studd's body slam does not look like it's trying to protect anybody. Big John Studd's a very tall guy, right? And he really gets that body slam up, and then he even goes a little higher into the press and down, and really launches Barry Horowitz out, and Horowitz just crashes to the mat. So it's not it looks like a rough body slam to take. Barry Hart is manhandled, which is one of the grossest words ever, manhandled. Barry Hart is manhandled through this match. He has absolutely no offense. Big John Studd works the back of his opponent the entire match, setting up, of course, for the big finish, the Big John Studd back breaker. And the Body Slam Challenge continues. It'll be up to next week. It'll be up to a staggering $4,000. All, of course, leading to somebody coming out. Not the quality of Bob Bradley, but somebody coming out trying to collect that money. Who could it be? Next up, we see again for the third straight week, Mr. Fuji, as he takes on again for the third straight week, Curt Hennig. Fuji's managed by Lou Albano, which was kind of surreal, right? Fuji, we know him most as a manager. Here he is brought to the ring by another manager. It's kind of weird to see, and in like a year, these two would be managers. Fuji is, of course, without Mr. Saito, who I have determined at this point is no longer a part of the WWF, and so they are pushing Mr. Fuji as a singles competitor, or so we think. Wait for it. You gotta think in this match that Curt Hennig is going to get a lot of offense. In fact, as Fuji's on his way out and Hennig is on his way up, I would not be shocked at a Curt Hennig upset over Mr. Fuji. But not to be indeed. Curt Hennig gets his offense, gets enough offense, and of course, in the beginning, you get the rush of Curt Hennig offense that really gets the crowd going, has Mr. Fuji retreating all over the place, jumping out of the ring to recollect himself. But slowly, Mr. Fuji regains the offense. And Fuji has two finishers. The first finisher he uses is where he climbs to the second rope. I've said this before. He climbs to the second rope. He bounces a couple of times backwards, and he lunges himself onto the prone opponent. That's fine. His other finishing move, I absolutely love, and I think he even yells "Banzai" during this finishing move, and he used this one against Hennig. Hennig is down, body slammed, down on his back. Fuji hits the ropes. And about halfway before he gets to his opponent, he turns completely around, blindly, and lunges backwards onto Hennig, doing a reverse backwards diving headbutt. And if you watch AEW today, the move is now called the coffin drop, right? Where you just throw all caution to the wind and you just blindly jump backwards onto your opponent. Darby Allin does it, and it's pretty awesome. I like it. Mr. Fuji was doing it in 1983, and it wasn't called the coffin drop. It was just cool. It was a cool move. I like it, and that's how Mr. Fuji defeats the future Mr. Perfect in this match. Interesting to note, as Mr. Fuji is celebrating his victory, McMahon says, very, very bright future for Curt Hennig. And indeed, it was a very, very bright future for Curt Hennig. Coming up next, my favorite wrestler so far of 1983, the Magnificent Muraco, takes on another Tony Russo, who I lovingly refer to as the John Travolta of the WWF jobbers. Muraco, I can't say enough. I cannot say enough, and I don't want to keep repeating myself, but Don Muraco is such a good heel. Such a good heel. Truly 100% deserved a world title run. And if you watch some of the LJN videos I was doing, I was kind of talking about how it would go. I don't think he should have been the person to lose the belt to Hulk Hogan. I think that should have been Iron Sheik. But I do think around 80 or 81, he should have beaten 80, 81, 82 even, 83 even. He should have beaten Bob Backlund for a 1-year run with the title. Then maybe give it back to Backlund. Then maybe have Iron Sheik. then Hulk Hogan, and then from there. I don't think Muraco should have ever lost the title to Hulk Hogan. But he should have held it. He should have had a run with it. In this match, Tony Rico gets a total of 2 punches. 2 offensive moves. And Muraco is just so dominant and slow and prodding and just arrogant and works the fans so well. And he's just so good. And I don't even think he sold the punches for Rico, but that's all the offense that Tony Rico got was 2 punches. And if you notice Don Muraco, he always has this very strange whip into the ropes, called the Irish whip for whatever reason. And most people, and I think all people, when they're backing a guy into the ropes to fling him across the other side, they kind of got one hand on the chest, guiding him back, and then hit the back and move him that way. Don Muraco grabs you by your wrist with 2 hands and flings you into the ropes. That is Don Muraco's Irish whip, and I love it. It looks so cool, and he's the only one who does it. He's the only one who does it. Go check it out. Muraco has usually been winning with the pile driver, the tombstone pile driver, as it became known, the reverse pile driver. That was his finishing move. For some reason today, he catches a flailing Tony Rico coming off the ropes, catches him with a belly-to-belly, a quick belly-to-belly suplex, and gets the pin. That's it. No reverse tombstone pile driver for us today. And that's the move that Vince McMahon couldn't call. He had no idea. What is that? What is that devastating maneuver? Muraco just burying the shoulder into Tony Rico, putting all of his weight onto him. It's a suplex. It's a belly-to-belly suplex, Vince. Up next, my least favorite segment of these shows, the Rogers Corner. But this one has a purpose to it. Rogers Corner has Mr. Fuji and Captain Lou as the guests, and they're just sitting there. And these segments are only like 30 seconds. It's so odd and so quick that Rogers just immediately starts talking, just babbling on. And he's saying, I've got some interesting news for you two. My sources, I have heard from very, very good sources that Mr. Fuji has purchased the rights to 2 wrestlers in the WWF. And he's going to be a part-time wrestler / manager. And of course, Fuji and Albano go, oh, no, that's not true. And Rogers says, oh, it's true. And then Rogers Corner's over. It's over. But we're getting a little bit of the seed planting that Mr. Fuji is on his way out as a wrestler. Mr. Saito is gone. Mr. Fuji's best days are behind him. And they are planting the seed that Mr. Fuji will soon be a manager. And I'm interested to see who his acquisitions are, if you will. It's not Demolition. Not yet. Next up we have Jimmy Snuka. Superfly Jimmy Snuka, led towards the ring by Buddy Rogers. And he's taking on yet another Tony, Tony Russo. We've got Tony Russo, we've got Tony Rico, we've got Tony Cologne, all on today's show. I should have looked ahead of time, and I'm going to call it out when we get to the time period, but this is around the time that Jimmy Snuka's girlfriend, Nancy Argentino, was killed or died. I want to look real quick. Nancy Argentino. When was it? Oh, well, let's see. Was it in January? I don't know. Sometimes you just want stuff to pop up. May. We're not there yet. Never mind. May 1983. We're gonna pay special attention to that because that was the I assume then the June taping, the June airings of the May tapings. I assume is when that all went down. So we'll pay attention to that. But anyway, Jimmy Snuka comes out, and at this point in time, he is the most popular wrestler, in the WWF or the world. I mean, Jimmy Snuka is just adored by the fans, and they are on their feet. They are popping their heads off for the Superfly. Interestingly, Jimmy Snuka is wearing all black today. He's wearing all black trunks and black knee pads. No leopard print for Snuka yet. I don't know. I can't remember last episode if he did or didn't. I don't think he had all black. I think this is a new look for Snuka. Jimmy Snuka is in incredible shape. He looks tremendous. He has a fantastic physique. Really looks to be put together. Really looks to be in great shape. You know how this ends. You know, it's chop, it's headbutt, it's punch, it's kick. It's very minimal offense. And then it's body slam. And once that body slam happens, he pulls up his knee pads, and the crowd knows what's coming. And the crowd is loving it. They're on their feet for the Superfly leap. This one is a pretty impressive Superfly leap, and I'll try to show you a photo of the distance. Jimmy Snuka goes about 2/3 of the ring to hit his opponent. It's a massive leap. And it's such an impressive move for the time. Probably means nothing today, but the Superfly leap in 1983 is like death-defying. I mean, it's just, the crowd just eats it up. And, watching the Dark Side of the Ring Vice show on Jimmy Snuka, man, there's so much evidence, it seems, that points to him, being guilty of what I would call a homicide or a, I don't know, manslaughter. I would probably call it manslaughter. Did he intentionally and premeditatedly kill his girlfriend? No, of course not. Did he hurt her and, the results of whatever altercation they got into? Did that kill her? Yeah, but, I'd be willing to bet. So we call that manslaughter. And, so is Jimmy Snuka a murderer? I mean, we gotta let's look at definitions. I don't think he intentionally killed anybody. I think he got into a fight with her, and and got rough, and she died. And of course, that's horrible. But I wonder what could have been with Jimmy Snuka. Watching this 1983, how over he is, and there was, I think there was so many things holding him back. His level of intelligence has been questioned. His cognitive awareness, his ability to communicate, and I don't think that was just a what happened? What's going on here? Last I know, I was talking about Jimmy Snuka and manslaughter and things like that, and all of a sudden the camera malfunctions and the rest of the footage is gone. I don't usually believe in the paranormal, but that's all changed. I believe the great Jimmy Snuka just manipulated the last 20 minutes of this footage and made it disappear. So we're starting over here. We've got a wardrobe change. And we're finishing it up. Let's finish it up, okay? Let's move on from Jimmy Snuka. I'm a little bit unnerved, if you will. Rocky Johnson is next up on the card, and he takes on... Boy, oh boy, this is one of our first appearances of one of the most infamous enhancement workers of all time. The great Frankie Williams. Frankie Williams is finally making his Wrestling with the Past debut. Frankie Williams is famous. He has Rowdy Roddy Piper to thank for his fame. Rowdy Roddy Piper in 84 had Frankie Williams on Piper's Pit as a guest and beat the holy hell out of him. And it was beautiful. And there's so much to talk about with that Piper's Pit episode, including Frankie saying something and Piper having no idea what he said and misinterprets what he said and repeats what he said wrong, and it's so good. But that's how we know Frankie Williams. Frankie Williams is the least wrestler-looking wrestler of all time. Frankie Williams looks like he's 76 years old. He's probably late 20s here. Frankie Williams looks like he smokes a carton of cigarettes a day. Frankie Williams looks like everybody's uncle. Everybody has an uncle, maybe a great uncle, that looks like Frankie Williams. But nonetheless, Rocky Johnson taking on Frankie Williams. And for the first time in my history, I see some offense from Frankie Williams, which is incredible to see because the punches are so bad. You can tell that he doesn't get to practice them much. They're kind of like these weird jabs. And like I said, I don't think he got in much punching practice in his wrestling career. So when he throws them, they look horrible. But Rocky Johnson allows Frankie Williams to get in a huge amount of offense, which was so fun to see. But Rocky Johnson comes back and hits two drop kicks, and one of them looks like it knocks Frankie Williams out cold. It doesn't. Frankie Williams is not out, but the kick, the second of the two drop kicks, just one foot catches him square in the side of the head, the other foot right in the mush. Great looking drop kick. Wins it for The Rock, the Rock prior to The Rock. Rocky Johnson. Good things coming, I predict, for Rocky Johnson in the not so distant future. Possibly a tag team title run. Not sure. We'll have to see. We'll have to hang in there. We end today's card with my least favorite wrestler. And for some reason, he has been on every single episode so far. And he is drizzling. Superstar Billy Graham. Karate chopping superstar Billy Graham. Taking on Jerry O. That's right, Jerry O. Yeah, Billy Graham looking saggy, looking old, looking like his skin is falling off his bones, looking like he's going through a solid uncycling, a cycling off of the juice. Just looking silly with the bald head and the black mustache. I don't like him. Billy Graham wins with the ninja thrust to the throat. Eliminates Jerry O. And ends this week's episode of WWF Championship Wrestling. A couple of things that I noticed. The referee roles today versus back then are so different. In fact, on some of these episodes, you lose track of where the referee even is. The referee is hardly in any camera shots, which means they're not on top of the action, which means they're not involving themselves, which means they're not overselling or even reacting to what's going on in the ring. They're just doing their job as a referee. Nowadays, you've got referees that are selling more than the wrestlers. You've got referees that are making silly faces throughout the whole match, Aubrey Edwards. You've got referees that are going down on their knees to check on the wrestler every single time there's a move, Aubrey Edwards. And, it's dumb. And the first referee that started doing that was Tommy Young in the NWA. And I liked him as a kid because he would fly all over the ring he made the most passionate 3 counts I've ever seen. But now as I got older and I watched some of that footage, he's just like, he's too much, you're too much. Referees are not characters. Referees are referees. And in this era, the referee had a straight face. Referee was usually a 70-year-old man. Referee was usually out of the picture. Wasn't even in the angle, in the shot, like I said. Good to see. I enjoy that. This week's match of the week. I want to not pick the same style of match every week. I don't want to. A match of the week isn't necessarily a 5-star blockbuster. I mean, how can we have a 5-star blockbuster when every one of these matches is averaging like 4.5 minutes? If that. So it's going to be for different reasons. And this week's match of the week is Rocky Johnson versus Frankie Williams. Because of 2 reasons. Frankie Williams gets a ton of offense, which we never see from him. And Rocky Johnson hits a ridiculous-looking dropkick that, flattens the face of Frankie Williams. So we're going to give match of the week to Rocky Johnson versus Frankie Williams. And I think you can predict the clunker of the week. Unfortunately, the honor is going to go to, once again, superstar Billy Graham as he takes on Jerry O. No offense to Jerry O. Anything that superstar Billy Graham does is going to clunk as far as I'm concerned. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. We are almost wrapped up with January of 1983. We've got a house show coming up. We might even have 2 house shows coming up. And then we have a January 29th episode of WWF Championship Wrestling. Until then, Jason Up, New 80s Revolution, for Vincent Mann, Pat Patterson, saying, we'll see you next time. Good night now.